I'm gonna pin the man, the myth right there. Success does love speed. You're dang right.
How are you?
Man, I am doing so good. How are you?
Yeah, real great.
I'm gonna pin the ugly guy next to you. There we go. Beautiful. Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, likewise. Long time.
It has been a long time, man. I was just talking, well, first of all, I was actually just talking to Jay Ferrugia just now,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
about you. He says to tell you hi. But we're just talking, man. Mexico was like almost 3 years ago, I think. And I think that's the last time I saw you. I mean, I know it's the last time I saw you in person. I was down there. I was
Yeah,
down there with
right.
Bedros and
Yeah.
Lovell and those guys, man.
Yeah,
So
that was hilarious. That was right after I moved there. And
it
then,
was.
so we haven't chatted since then. And since then, we've had three kids. So it's a
I
lot has
know.
changed. Yeah.
A lot has changed. Yeah, you guys have been going hard, man. Two girls and a
Well, my wife has been going hard.
she's been going hard. Yeah, true story. Two girls, congratulations on all that, man.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really amazing. And man, it's
It's
the best thing, the absolute
not
best thing.
nothing better, man. We went two girls and a boy in that order too, and so
Oh, nice.
I'm biased, man.
Yeah.
That's the role. And happy belated to Michelle too. I think she just had a
Oh, thank you. Yeah, yeah. She just had her birthday, and then the our firstborn had her third birthday. So, yeah, a lot is all that has collapsed and or like happened since we saw each other down there.
so wild, man. So wild. Well, so cool. And I'm so grateful for you coming in and hanging out. And I'm pretty sure when you came on last time, I think you're with the young men. And
Yes.
right, and
Yeah.
we got some of our men on here too. And it's cool, man, because Perfect Day Formula, is recommended reading for year one for the men
Good.
in there, right? So it is part of that first year.
Oh,
But man,
that's great.
I'm excited about Dark Side Discipline. I'm excited about what you wrote. The book preview has already been devoured. I know the book's on the way, and that's what Jay and I were just talking about because he posted that. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
I devoured the preview. I can't wait to dive into the book. And
Well, the
uh,
book is that what I sent you was the book. It's that short, and
perfect.
I sent you the PDF version
Yep.
of so the physical book is on the way, of course, but it's the same stuff. And yeah, it might ruffle a few feathers, so it certainly has on some of the other shows that I've done and some of the feedback I've gotten. But that's what it's meant to. I did a thing for Bedros's Legacy Tribe, and there was
Yep.
a few folks that followed up with me that eventually I won them over.
Good. That's all. Well, Bedros and I have talked recently about the need to continue to polarize, and
Yeah, man.
that's an okay thing. What's ruffling feathers? I think I know, but I want to dive into that. I want to
Sure.
give these guys a little bit of this, the preview of the book, so that these guys can all get it to when it comes out, and obviously send it out to the audience here. But
Yep.
what's ruffling the feathers, man?
Well, listen, hey, some people love to do a lot of things and they think that doing a lot of things is making a big difference to them. And I get it that doing hard things does, bring a challenge and it can give some confidence. But the dark side of discipline, the whole story about this is that discipline can be your savior up to a point, and then there is a very fine line that once you cross it, it can then become your master and it no longer serves you and you are serving it. And this is what I'm seeing in a lot of people today who are overwhelmed, who are too busy, and who are too exhausted, and who are putting the good in front of the great. So they're sacrificing the great things in their life. It could be family, it could be their business, it could be their big goals and dreams of writing a book or starting a business. And they're not getting around to putting the time and effort into that because they're doing all these little things and it's death by a thousand cuts. They have to do 2 hour morning routine. They have to work out twice a day. They have to read a book a week. They have to do a cold plunge, but family's not getting the time. So people are missing out on family time because they got to go back and do another workout. Whoa, wait a minute, slow down. That's not how this should be working. And that's what I'm calling out in this book. And people who it's ambitious people. So it's an ambitious guy who wrote the book, and other ambitious people like, whoa, you're telling me to be a little less ambitious, and I'm not telling you to be a little less ambitious. I'm telling you to direct that same level of energy, maximum energy, but into the right channels so
Yep.
that you get maximum results and you don't destroy yourself. Because I've seen destruction happen to quite a few people.
100%. You're talking about intentionality, man. And you use that example and the 1,000 workouts in a row, and then they're just,
Which is what we have for everybody listening. That's what I did. I had 1,000 workouts in a row, and it got in the way of me doing
doing
really more important things in my life.
doing other things. So man, I saw myself in so many of those stories that you were laying out. I saw the previous versions of me, and I still don't get this all right. But what I love about that book, and it is timely for me as anybody else, man, is that journey into being more intentional in the systems. And I love what you talk about with identifying level 10 problems. And you
Mhm.
give these guys a little bit of that concept, that definition, because that to me is that's the key to what you're
That
talking about.
it is the key. Yeah. So we put that early in the book because, as you might learn, if you ever have you written a book yet?
So we've got another one coming now. I've done a short one, a very, very
Yeah.
short, shorter than even shorter than this.
Yeah.
We've got one that we're doing right now.
Okay. So listen, I have 200 unread books in my house. I mean, every book recommendation I hear, I buy.
Mhm.
And that's a big lesson to anybody that wants to write a book because, you can have a great book, but if nobody reads it, that's
Right.
unfortunate. And most people just don't buy the books that they read. If they do, they rarely get past the first chapter. Something else comes up, another book, they're off chasing it. So we made sure to jam the biggest lesson in the first part of the book. And that big lesson is the ultimate definition of discipline is putting a level 10 effort into your level 10 problem. And
Mhm.
this first came to me back at Bedros' Fitness Business Summit. So, for any of you who have never been to a fitness business summit that Bedros ran from 2007 to 2018 or so, we had up to 750 personal trainers in the audience. And they would come to the event to learn sales and marketing. And every year I would look out and I'd go, there's Jane, Johnny, and Josh. And they all have 8% body fat and $8 in their bank account.
Yep.
And sure enough, they'd listen to 2 full days of sales and marketing from the people on stage. And then they would go and talk to the other trainers about nutrition and workouts during the breaks, of course. And next year they'd come back and they'd sit in the same seats. And there's Jane, Johnny, and Josh. And they're 7% body fat and got $7 in their bank account. And what they were doing was they were going home from the event and they were putting a level 10 effort into their fitness and nutrition, which was a level 1 problem. They were already ripped to shreds. And getting more ripped actually didn't produce any results in their life.
Mm.
That's where they focused. And then what they did was they put a level 1 effort into their level 10 problem of applying sales and marketing. And so they came back and they were broke every year. And they were frustrated and struggling and it was causing stress in their marriages and all types of stuff. But sure enough, they were ripped, and it was just, it was that mismatch. And it was just, in a way, it was funny to see because it was so, it just didn't make sense, right? It was so irrational to me that they were coming to this event and not doing anything with it. And then I started to notice it really in everybody, including myself,
Mm.
including myself. And so I realized that in this day and age, you pick up this thing, this phone, you open up Instagram and you see somebody doing some other hard thing. It used to be running a marathon was hard. Now you got to run an ultra. Oh, you only ran one ultra? Well, I've ran an ultra 7 days in a row and on 7 different continents. You ever see there's these guys out there who have that as their bio? I ran a marathon or an ultra marathon on 7 different continents in 7 days. There is a guy who's at least on the marathon, 7 days, 7 different continents. He ran a
Yeah,
marathon,
I can
and
think of
it's
a
like, where does it end? Where does
yeah.
it end? Right? It's like the Something About Mary, movie. It's like, man, I'm gonna do 6 minute abs, and the guy goes, "Who works out in six? It's 7 minute abs. Seven
Seven
minute
minute
abs."
abs. That's so
Yeah,
that's so funny.
and but
Yeah.
it's just taken on the life of its own, and so you open this thing up, and it happens to me. Like there's stuff I see on there and go, man, maybe I should do that. No, I got 3 kids under 3. They're my level 10 problem. Am I giving them a level 10 effort? Okay, great. I've got a marriage. I want to make sure that marriage lasts. I just heard from another friend who'd been married for 20 years and it's over. I'm like, what's going on? I don't want to be that person. And I don't want to have weekend visitation rights. So I've got a level 10 here. And listen, working on your marriage and working on being great parent and the simplicity and the basics of changing diapers, like you can't put that on Instagram. You shouldn't put it on Instagram. And even if you did, nobody's going to like it. But if you get in a cold plunge, man, people are going to like your stuff. And
Oh,
so what people are doing, and listen, I like a cold plunge. Did one last week with for a date day with my wife, but I look at it as entertainment. Not the thing that's going to save me. What's really going to save me is me putting a level 10 effort into what really matters in my life. and it doesn't look sexy and it's really hard and you don't see instant results. And that's why people don't put a level 10 effort into their level 10 problems, whether it's fixing their marriage, whether it's fixing their health, whether it is, having that super difficult conversation with your business partner who's not
Mm,
pulling their weight or who you think might even be stealing from you or going behind your back. And you're like, man, I don't want to have that conversation. Or with that team member, whether it's a team member in your business, a team member at church, a team member in some community organization who's not pulling their weight or who's become a cancer, and you passively aggressively, not doing anything about it, like Bedros talks about in Man Up. Like those are level 10 problems, and they don't make good social media posts compared to the things that are, level 2 problems in our life, like, did
so
I
good.
did I go in an ice bath? Well,
So
listen,
good, man.
you know.
So good. We lie to ourselves so well. We lie to ourselves so well, right? We will use the excuse of I've got to hit that next ultra to avoid the things that are the level 10 problems. And
And
likewise,
yeah,
oh,
and I interrupted you and I
you're good,
apologize. But you can't write the book until you've lived the book. And
man. Mhm,
so the dark side of discipline, I used to be very undisciplined. I was a binge drinker. I used my
mhm,
introverted tendencies as an excuse not to go out and be social. Pedro saw the worst of me. And he was one of the men that helped me become better. And so I needed discipline. I needed the good side of discipline to level up, to be the
mhm,
lifeline to get me out of trouble. And some of these things that we see out there, working out twice a day, they are for the alcoholic, the obese, the person who's just a complete mess. They are the lifeline. And
mhm.
so, thank you to discipline for that. But then I got to the point where I had to work out 1,000 days in a row. I had to go to bed at 8 p.m. Couldn't go out to couldn't go out to the dinner at Fitness Business Summit because I had to be in bed at 8 p.m. Did I really need to go to bed at 8 p.m. or was I using that as an excuse so I could be an introvert and not challenge myself to be around a lot of people? And that's what the truth was. And then it got in the way of me. I had fear of rejection from dating. I didn't want to get rejected by women, so it's like, I won't get serious about the dating. And then, next thing you know, I'm like in my 40s and not married. Fortunately, I figured that out. And so, but I let the discipline, the hard things, quote unquote, get in the way of doing what mattered.
That's it. That's it.
And I don't want it to happen to other people.
That's right. That's it. It is because and that's you basically said exactly where I was going, man. It's the two sides of that spectrum where we will lie to ourselves and be really, really focused on something that, like you have said, is a level one thing to avoid specifically. Now I don't have time to really even give any thought to those level 10 problems. I can avoid it, but I can tell myself I'm accomplishing great things, and so that doesn't matter, right? And then
Mm,
the reverse is also true. We can go so hard in the paint on some things that we also give ourselves the excuse to stay the same. And
yeah,
we'll talk, so it is that balance. So one of the things that I love that you say in there is you're talking about how standards eat discipline for dinner, right? And I love that saying,
yeah.
like, standards eat discipline for dinner. Knowing the difference between the discipline that is killing you and the standards that are setting you free. And I love that there. So when you're taking a look at your issues, how are you putting a system around knowing what your level 10 problems are, or level 10 priorities, like what those are? Because I have to imagine in different seasons those things could potentially change. So is that
Man, they can change week by week
right?
in a way.
So
Yeah.
so is that a systems thing where you put a system in place to identify those? Like how are you doing that so that you juggle the most efficient way?
Right. And so you can have multiple level 10 problems. And so the way to identify these things is very simple. It's really just a self-reflection exercise. Systems come in a second, and I'll share how they're very, very helpful in this.
Hmm.
But we all know what our level 10 problems are, deep down, like, and we might try and come up with some other answers, but we know what keeps us up at night with anxiety, or
Hmm.
what we start thinking about first thing in the morning when we get up, and whether we're dreading it or whether it's causing worry in our life. And most people have multiple very big problems in their life, and we need to be honest with ourselves about that. And so it might be, it could be marriage. For a lot of men, it's marriage, especially you get up to year 10, year 15, And
Mm,
now you and your wife have simply become Uber drivers for the 10 and 12 year olds that have all the activities, and your
mm,
roommates with your wife, and it's gone from hot to cold. That's a level 10 problem.
mm,
And you could say, oh no, my level 10 problem is that, I need to be, fitter or something like that. But, somebody else who knew you very well, they'd go, no, 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 no. You just told me the other week, or, over a couple of beers, you were having trouble in your marriage. Like, you know what it is. And then it's just the courage. Do you have the courage to write down on the piece of paper? And you don't have to share it with everybody, but do you have the courage to write down on paper what your real level 10 problem is?
mm,
And and then what's the next problem? And is it a level 10 or is it a level 9? Wherever. And like this whole the numbering of it, let's not get too hung up on that. Let's
yeah.
just make sure that what's a big problem in our life is getting big time, energy, and attention. And then you simply match that. You just make sure that if it is personal side of things, are you making time in your personal life? You're not finding time, you make time for what really matters. And
Mm,
then you do that. When we talk about the systems are there because we're talking these are big problems that are going to require a lot of energy and effort, and there's a lot of other things we want to accomplish in our lives, a lot of other habits that we want to build. We need to build systems so that they don't take a lot of energy and effort. So we talk about the effortless discipline systems in the book, and we even use this peak performance pyramid. So we say like there's motivation at the top. It doesn't last. You can set up custom challenges for yourself. I'm not a big fan of generic challenges, but I do believe like Beaudreau's a 6 week challenge where you pick something that's specific that will move you ahead, that's serving you. Those things are good, but they're short term. And then discipline. When you think of discipline, most people think of that willpower, that white knuckling, that put a piece of cake in front of me when I'm starving and I'll sit there and I won't eat it. Like that's discipline. Okay, sure, but most cases you're going to run out of discipline before
mm.
that cake runs out of being cake. So
That's
you can
right.
only rely on it for so long. The next level is where things get real. This is where the basis of your success is in systems which are supported by your identity, and then standards are the foundation of it all. So the
Mm,
systems, we we help people eliminate bad habits and build good habits really, really fast. You want to make the bad habit as hard as possible. James Clear talks a lot about this in Atomic Habits. You set up as
mm,
much friction as possible in front of the bad habit. So when I was a binge drinker, what I had to do was I had to stop having alcohol in the house. I needed to then stop hanging around boozy environments. So I didn't go to bars, I didn't go to sporting events on a Saturday afternoon, and I needed to eliminate the people that were dragging me down to drinking.
mm,
And for some of that, it was I could not hang around a particular set of individuals at all. They brought no good, and they only pulled me into bad behavior. There was another set of individuals who were good friends of mine who had a lot going for them on the good side, but in most cases, I was spending time with them that would end up in drinking. So I had to then switch to the next level of the effortless discipline system. So the first level is elimination. I eliminated all that. Then I had to move to preparation. So it's EPC, elimination, preparation, and connection. We'll get to that in a second. So preparation, I then had to go to my friends who I wanted to spend time with and but not drinking, and I had to plan and prepare other activities. So Saturday morning hikes, Saturday morning workouts, Saturday morning even golf once in a while. Not my thing, but some of my friends want to do it. So do that early on a Saturday and then let them go about their drinking business. And eventually a lot of them came over to my side and stopped drinking too. But I had to do that. So elimination, preparation, and then it's connection. And then that's when I
mm.
started spending time with people like Bedros, who was never really much of a drinker. He and I were social drinkers for a long time. He's since given it up. I've given it up. A lot of other individuals that he's had on his stages and have spoken at the events that he and I have done, like Sharon Srivatsa, Jason Capital, a bunch of guys like that, just don't drink. We're not drinkers.
Yep.
And that's the next level. So you go from at first, when you have a bad habit
Mm,
and you want to get rid of it, you need the systems.
mm,
And then once the systems work so well, now you can build that confidence that we want to get from doing these hard things. And we go, I'm the type of person who does not drink. I'm a non-drinker. So I can
mm.
go into a bar, never be tempted by a drink. I'm the type of person, there's a lot of things that I have in my identity. I'm not a drinker. I don't curse or swear. I don't care if you do. I don't care if you do, but you'll
Yep.
make me laugh if you do, but I just don't. I don't do
Yep.
that. I exercise every day. I don't use pornography. These are all things that are part of my identity. It takes no discipline for
Mm,
me to make those decisions. You can put me in any bar, anywhere, any sporting event with any person peer pressuring me, and I will not have a drink. And it doesn't take any energy from me.
right.
And that's the identity, which then allows you to have those standards, which are the personal codes and operating systems for yourself. Like, this thing, for all its badness, it has an operating system that allows it to do
Mm,
unbelievable things. So the operating system allows it to take those pictures that we can't believe. It allows me to call Tokyo. It allows me to FaceTime my mom every night because of the operating system. And the operating system, it just works that way all the time. And if you
mm,
have standards such as, and the core values that I'm this, the modern day night principles that Beaudreau talks about are standards. And when you
right.
operate by those standards, it's like Steve Jobs wearing that black turtleneck in all those presentations he did, reduces decision fatigue. So
Mhm.
now I don't have to sit there and go, should I have a drink? Should I not have a drink? I know I'm going to wake up tired tomorrow. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much energy I used to waste when
Yep.
I was a social drinker thinking about that. Now I don't have to waste it. And so the whole standards eats disciplined for breakfast thing comes down to this story that I told in Perfect Day Formula as well. If you put two very hungry people in a room and they've fasted for 12 hours and you brought out a cheeseburger and one of those people was a vegan and the other person just was using willpower or discipline to not eat the cheeseburger, eventually they'll eat the cheeseburger, but the vegan won't because they have a standard that they don't eat meat.
That's
And
right.
so you'll never
Right.
get that person to flip because the
That's right.
standard. And it's just an example. It's not, I'm not promoting being a vegan or anything or never having a cheeseburger, but that just is a clearest example of boom, that's a standard versus discipline, willpower, and you know who's going to win every single time.
I love that so much, man. I love this identity piece so much. So, how old am I? 45. I'm 45. So I've never had a drink of alcohol.
Wow, that's amazing. You're the second person I've ever met that can say that. Lewis Howes is the only other person. And when I met Lewis
Know
and he
that.
told me that like
Yeah.
15 years ago, I
Yeah.
was I was blown away because I grew up a farm boy in Canada in a small town where
Yeah.
you drink beer
Yeah.
and play hockey, or you play hockey
Sure.
and drink beer. It doesn't matter
Sure.
which order you did it in. You
Sure.
just did
Yeah.
it.
Right. You just so that's what you're saying, man. That was one of the key pieces for me in so much of what I've been able to do in business, and so much of what I strive to do is realizing that identity piece around every single bit of it. The drinking has never been an issue because I had decided long ago that that is just who I was.
That's
And
right.
so I even as a college student, I went to the, quote unquote number one party school in America. And it was
Arizona State.
and there was so at that point, so at that time it was Chico State was number one
Uh,
on Playboy's list. And dude, it was just never it because it's not an option. Right? It's not an option. So that
right.
identity piece is so strong. And I love that you call out the pornography in the book too. Because it is such a topic, man, that needs to be spoken about more in this kind of fashion. And not the boogeyman, not the devil, but the reality of switching your identity around this and making that choice.
Yeah, and so the pornography thing, the argument that I make that you probably won't see a lot, a lot of people make the physiological and even in the religious arguments, but
Mhm.
like morally, pornography is not a victimless crime. It is,
Mhm.
every single time someone uses pornography, they are financially supporting criminals.
Right.
And would you go out and give money to criminals? No, of course not.
Right.
But that industry, like it is full of criminals, sex
Yeah.
trafficking, all that type of stuff. The women are so messed up in that industry, and high suicide rates, and you just when you look, like, I'm just trying to give every perspective of like
Mhm.
here's why not to use it, and I wanted to put those stats in there, and the stats of like children's access to it now is unbelievable compared to
Unreal.
back when I'm 49, so I mean
Right.
nobody had access to it as a kid back when I was growing up, and that's the real, there's a real dark side to it that people don't understand, and
Very much
that's
so.
so I wanted to make sure that I emphasize that in there, but also the standards part of it. I have literally had men that I've coached and friends stop pornography overnight once once I told them, like, hey, you're an honorable family man. You're not the type of person who uses pornography. And that didn't require any effortless discipline systems. What that
Mm.
simply required was their change in their personal identity. And that's how powerful personal identity is. And the first time I think I really got deep into personal identity stuff was, again, James Clear's Atomic Habit. I thought that was the greatest thing that I got from that book. And it is so powerful because even when I was quitting swearing, I had a friend from London, England, and I always looked up to him as a polite and courteous British gentleman. And I just said, from today on, from the day I quit swearing, I'm a polite and courteous British gentleman who doesn't swear. You know, I say hello to people when they come in the elevator, and it was difficult for me to do both those things, quit swearing and talk to strangers. But by shifting my identity, well, that's what that type of person would do, and I'm that type of person, then I'm going to do that sort of thing. Made it a whole lot smoother for me to do. I
A
wouldn't say
whole lot.
easy, but smoother.
Sure. I love that, man. And I love that. So Atomic Habits also part of this book. And gentlemen, I know you guys are going to start putting your hands up. I'm going to start bringing you guys in here in a second. I want to explore this really quickly too, because the identity piece, and this is a question that I've um, been wrestling a little bit with from a philosophical standpoint lately too. So the identity piece, and we've worked with Todd Herman, in the
Oh
alter
yeah.
back, right? And so we've worked with Todd in developing this and everything we're doing here too. James's book is in month 2 for us for Atomic Habits, and so it's this need for the identity shift. And then there is this great quote that I know you like too by James, who talks about if a decision is
Oh yeah.
reversible, you're going to make it quickly, and if it's irreversible, you make it slowly.
Mhm.
And this is like a philosophical wrestling. So I'm like, I want that identity shift. I want it now. I want it to be irreversible. So it's like I want to put the slow intentionality out, but also I want it. I want it to go like that. How do you kind of piece those two together? If that makes sense.
Well, the thing with the identity shift is you have to make sure that it's right for you. So
Mhm.
my co-author of the book, this guy Daniel Woodrum, he was a Fit Body Bootcamp owner with me. We were co-owners on Fit Body Bootcamp, and he's been in Beaudreau's world for a long time. And he once tried to quit swearing because I quit swearing, and I'm a bit of a role model to Daniel. And but then he just realized that didn't matter to him. So when you're choosing your identity, and one of the main arguments I'm making in the book is that every discipline journey, all of this stuff, it first cannot start until you've done the hardest thing of all, which is thinking. So you
Mhm.
think about what matters to you, you think about where you want to get to in life, your vision for your life, and you think about what would be your specific definition of success for whatever changes you want to make. And now you can go and run your own race. And
Mhm.
so Daniel was being reactive. He was seeing somebody doing something, me, stopping swearing, and he was copying. And you can't, anytime you copy something without thinking about it, it's not going to really work very well. And so
Mhm.
he realized, like, sure, it's a good thing not to swear, but I just don't, he just doesn't care that much about not swearing. And I don't hold it against him. So he decided that that's not going to be part of his identity. So you first, back to James's quote, get really, really clear about who you are as a person. Get comfortable in your own skin. And when you are comfortable in your own skin, then you're going to know what your identity needs to be, where you want to get to in life. And even if everybody else is, jumping off a cliff or whatever, you know that that's not right for you. So don't go and do it. Don't be a lemming. Really think for yourself. And thinking is probably one of the rarest things in this day and age because, I pulled this phone out a few times in this presentation. Like, it's our lives are so set up to be reactive right now
Mhm.
with this thing, and it's hard for people to get away from it. There's always a podcast in their ears, there's always an audiobook in their ears, there's always some other person that is the hot new guru on Instagram, or there's always another physical challenge coming up on your explore page that you want to chase. And I understand, like, it still even happens to me.
Mhm.
Like, do you know who Chris Bumstead is?
Yeah, I know who that is. Yeah, I don't know
Right.
Chris.
So
I know who that is.
Chris Bumstead, I never knew who the guy was until probably like November of last year. But he's
Same.
like this 6 or 7 time Mr. Olympia natural
Mhm.
physique something or other. And he's a pretty awesome dude. He's a Canadian dude, and he's a funny guy. Seems really nice. And I see all his stuff, and I think, maybe I should start natural bodybuilding. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm 49 years old, and my shoulders are so messed up from everything, from jujitsu to hockey to all types of stuff. And I got 3 kids under 3.
Yeah.
In what world would it make sense for me to do that? But I
Mm,
saw it on Instagram, and there's something called mimetic desire, where you see
mm,
something that people have around you that you kind of look up to and you want to have it. Like if anybody here has went and got and bought a fancy watch because they saw somebody else buy a fancy watch, and then you go, I don't even like wearing watches. Like,
mm.
we it's like keeping up with the Joneses. And it used to be keeping up with the Joneses meant buying a bigger house and a bigger car and getting yourself into bankruptcy. Today, keeping up with the Joneses means, you know, cold plunging and getting up earlier than Craig Ballantyne and doing 2 workouts a day and reading a book a week and going bankrupt in your time and your
Mm.
impact because you're so busy. And that's what keeping up with the Joneses is today. And I
True.
just, again, that's what this book is, a word of warning, and it's a recommendation to do thinking. And when you do the thinking, you figure yourself out. Now you can build the proper systems and identity and standards for yourself and
Right.
go forward and achieve what you really were put here on this earth to achieve.
So freaking good, man. I'm gonna start bringing these guys in. So I'm basically what I'm hearing though is I have my alarm set right now for 3:56 a.m. because I think yours was 3:57.
It used to be 3:57 a.m.
Okay.
and then I got to
So
the point where I didn't need an alarm. And now I just get up whenever the youngest, so our youngest sleeps in a room, and he's seven
yeah,
months old,
yeah,
and he still gets up a couple times in the middle of the night, and
yeah.
I'll get up anywhere from 2:30 to 4 o'clock, whatever.
Yep. Yep. That's part of it.
And the other night I was up for 4 hours with the second oldest, the middle kid, because she just wouldn't, she was teething or something, and so I was 4 hours. I was up and slept like 3 hours that night, but that's what you gotta do when you're dad.
That's right, man. That's level 10 right there, all day long. All right, Mr. Bagley.
Craig, thank you so much for your time. I have a page and a half of notes here already, so really appreciate you choosing to say yes.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you. Curious actually about your shirt, Success Loves Speed. I would love to hear you expound on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think it was Jason Capital who said it the most, and another mentor of Beaudreau and mine, a guy named Dan Kennedy. He's big in the marketing world. I think he used "Success loves speed" a lot, and this is similar to the James Clear quote, which is, "If a decision is reversible, make it quick." And in most cases, most decisions are reversible, and because I coach business owners, I see so many people just paralyzed. What email software should I use? What color should the website be? What, should I use video or this? Should I try LinkedIn or Instagram? Just do it for gosh sakes. Get out there. Should I use 4 sets of 6 or should I use 3 sets of 8? My goodness, people, don't get so hung up on it. Let's go out and take action. Some massive action in most cases is the solution.
Mm,
So, Bedros and I coached a lot of people in the fitness world for, we probably started our first mastermind in 2010 or 2011. We stopped just before COVID in 2019. And I think the two biggest hindrances we saw to entrepreneurs were, one is that they did not take action. They knew what to do, but they went and gathered more information. And the flip side is that they couldn't say no to anything. So they were saying yes to all these little requests and they were saying no to their big goals and dreams. And they just died, death of a thousand cuts. They never had any time to do what really mattered. So that's where the
mm,
success love speed comes from. Of course, if this is not applicable to, you know, when the person who goes to Vegas and meets somebody at a bar, they shouldn't rush off to the little chapel like in the Hangover movie. That's where success does not love speed. You got to slow down on those decisions that are irreversible. But in most cases, uh, this goes very well. This is actually a customized Fuel Hunt T-shirt. So
oh,
they,
nice.
yeah, we have a mastermind meeting every 3 times a year, and we have about 50 of our clients there. And every single time we get them to make a new theme T-shirt. So our next meeting is all about the 80-20 principle, and
Yep.
so we're getting T-shirts made for that.
That's awesome. Eric, I think it's kind of weird that he just called out you and Kate on how you guys met too. He doesn't even know that
Oh
story.
no, oh no.
I'm just teasing. Does that help, Mr.
Awesome.
Bagley?
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Awesome, man. Mr. Wellens, let's get you in here.
Alrighty. Can you hear me?
We've
Yes,
got you,
Jeremy.
brother.
All right. Hey, Craig, it's Coach Jeremy. I'm it's glad to have you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I think what you were talking about, I've kind of dubbed that myself as like the constant, just the culture of consumption, and then the constant failure before you even start, which is
Sure.
every direction you turn, there's a radio station, a podcast, TV commercial, or whatever that tells you what you're doing. You should be doing this, but it's counter to the last thing that you heard that said you should be doing the other thing, right? And so it's just this like instead of taking action, we just consume, 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 consume. But everything out there is telling you that the way that you're sleeping is wrong, the way that you're drinking water is wrong, the way that you're working out is wrong. You
Oatmeal
should
is
run more.
wrong. Oatmeal is wrong. That's one of my
Right.
favorites. And then you have Cody Sanchez telling you need to start a vending machine business, and this person telling you need to just have one business. Yeah, it
It's
is.
so funny. That's so funny.
My
It's always been that way, but in different levels. Like
Mhm.
back when Beaudreau and I were coaching people, I did tell people like you need to unsubscribe from everybody except for one. And if it means unsubscribing from me, by all means, choose your one. And
Right.
because the information is all correct.
Mhm.
It's like dieting. All diets work. It's just the human doesn't do the work, and that's why the diet didn't work. So choose
Mm.
one and onward.
Yeah, which actually leads me to my main question, and I think you kind of got into it when you talked about the, getting into the process of elimination, right? But
Mhm.
when for the, for the person that's new at this or just the, average gentleman outside of this group, you've got so many different people that sometimes we let a lot of things have a vote in our life that don't deserve a vote in our life, right? And so you have society, you've got your friends, you got your wife that says she wants more, your friends that say they want to go out and they want to see you more. You've got your
Mhm.
kids at home, you've got your boss that says he wants more. So with the process of elimination, can you talk about that kind of racking and stacking? And then how do you find, or the importance of who gets a vote in your life when it comes to these things?
Mm.
Because again, wife's important, kids are important, but the wife wants more, but you don't have more to give because you got to take care of yourself, right? So where do you find like who gets a vote in your life and the things that need to happen?
That is a great question. It really is the
Mm.
struggle. So what we teach in the book is I'll go a little bit further than what's in the book. So first of all, it's like, what's your big why, right? So that's the first step in figuring out what's going to be important here, because then we're going to run everything through a filter. We want to eliminate the decision fatigue, and we want to basically be able to take almost every question that comes in, run it through our filters, which then is like parameters or boundaries or a checklist, which gives us the most correct answer. So if we know what our big why is, in most cases, a big why of gentlemen watching this can be like, everything is really for a family. Like that's what, we're doing this for our wife and our kids and for their future and to make sure that we're giving them an environment in which they can flourish. Okay, great. The next thing that we take people through that we don't talk about in the book, but is a values exercise. And so I ask people like in the next 10 years, what do you want to have accomplished for your family, for your health, for your wealth, and for your personal enrichment? And this is where people can really brain dump and vomit out um, everything that's in their head that they want to do. From I want to take my entire family, like my extended family, on a trip to Europe or something like that, or I want to start a charity, I want to write 3 books, and I want to grow this business, and I want to make sure my kids get this level of sports and in this college. Great, get it all out, and then that be very um, cognizant of what didn't get put on there, right? Well, I want to go to Vegas 3 times a year. Well, it didn't get put on there. So when people come and say to you, hey, let's go to Vegas, that's not really going to matter to me in 10 years from now. Or when I'm 80 and my 90 or 110 in my artificially intelligence powered rocking chair, what's really going to matter? That's another way to start filtering the decisions that we make today. What's really going to matter in the future? So after we get the values out of somebody's head, we go, okay, now this is what's actually in the book is let's create a 3-year vision for our life. And this has been really powerful for me. So this is why I'm very deeply invested in this process. I'm also a strategic, futuristic thinker, according to the Clifton Strength Finders test. And so I think a lot about planning and preparation. And so I ask every single one of my coaching clients to tell me exactly what their life is going to look like in 3 to 5 years from now. So pick an exact date, pick an exact location. What are you celebrating? Where do you live? What cars are in the garage? What's your relationship like? what are your kids like? What are your kids into? What do they do? What does your family do? What does your family not do? What do you do when you go on vacation? What are your habits weekly? What does family do on Sunday? What does your work day look like? What does your work week look like? Tell me all of that stuff. And then and then when you tell me that, like, we're eliminating a lot of other things. So again, this is like the dog that didn't bark, right? It's telling us, like, here's actually what's not important because I didn't mention it. And therefore, we can use that as a filter. Does this get me? Because the vision is a North Star, and the North Star has a straight line to success. And so therefore, when Johnny from college comes along and says, hey, Bobby, remember Bobby from college? It's a bachelor party. Let's go to Vegas. And you're like, huh, all right, let me just see. So in 3 years from now, I want to have 3 kids. I want to be married. I want to be living on the street, have a great marriage. I want to be healthy and fit. How does Vegas with college buddies fit into this? It doesn't. Dangerous detour. I say no to it. And, so that's like an easy one compared to some of the questions you asked. So we'll keep on diving deep. But then once you know exactly where you want to get to, now you can break it down to, like, a year from now. Tell me exactly what I'm going to accomplish in a year. And you do the same sort of exercise. And again, it narrows the focus, because if you want to do great things in life, you have to do fewer things. You can only do a few great things. And we're all here to achieve those great things. So then from there, we can go and we can build a 90-day blueprint. If we know we want to get to in 1 year and what we must accomplish in 1 year, well, let's do a fast start guide. And here's what we need to do in the next 90 days. And here are the people that we need to do to get there. And so it's all a process of elimination and filtering down. And then when all the requests come in, it's us figuring out, does that request move me ahead on this straight line? And if it doesn't, it's a not now. It can be a maybe later, but it's a not now. And so then that allows us to best design our days so that we accomplish what we want to have in 3 to 5 years from now. So it's all through that. Now, on a personal note, it's very easy for me to say no to a lot of requests because I have a lot of introverted tendencies. I'm really just happy hanging around a very small number of people. Even though I have a very large network, it's designed in a way where I communicate with them according to my rules. So I make the world play by my rules. I don't play by the world's rules. And I know myself very, very well. I'm comfortable in my own skin, and I know what works for me and what doesn't. So for those people that are more social, now you have to go and you have to start saying, what's going to be the greatest impact? And I have a limited amount of time. If a very social person has a limited amount of time, they want to spend time with their family, grow their business, make sure that they're healthy, right? So how can we then, it's very much like time blocking and being productive with our time. How can we get the most social impact from the least number of engagements that pull us away from our family? And so it's like, how can I arrange to have a whole bunch of people that I really like, who are like-minded, all together in the same place? And so I start to look for building those events and meetings and meetups, because again, that makes everything operate on my system, right? And so if I want to make sure that I have the time for my family and everything, but I want to see these 6 or 12 men, and each one of those guys, like, hey, come and do this, come and do this. Well, I could go and do that, and I'd run out of time. Or I could say, I'm going to go and I'm going to be the linchpin here, and I'm going to put together the event. And the event is going to be great. It's going to be entertaining, but it's going to be on my terms. I don't want to be hungover the next day from the event. So the event will be from these hours to these hours in this location, that everyone will still have a good time, because everyone's okay with having a good time without booze, and it's going to be done my way. So that's how I would look at it, with the key underlying element in there. Make the world play by your rules. Don't play by the world's rules. And the more you can control everything, you can get what you need and what others want, without sacrificing and getting into any type of trouble that it's like, man, I wish that didn't have to happen.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate that. I lately just been calling it solving for peace, right? And then again, finding out who gets a vote and doesn't. What I hear you saying essentially is finding out who I am or who I want to be, and who I, based on the values that I set, who we as a family want to be, right? But then understanding that, like, hey, maybe some things aren't what I hoped for. Maybe my mom and dad, who want to have a say in the family, like, hey, sorry, mom, like, you don't get a vote, right? And your friends. But then it's also just kind of like, hey, the relationship that I hoped we had isn't necessarily what I wanted isn't going to be, grieve that, but then also understand like, hey, you don't get a vote, move forward and continue on. But I think sometimes we overcomplicate it because we're just like, well, you see, I'm in a business and the family's tied into the business and my friends this, and we just overcomplicate it. Sometimes it's a simple saying, hey, like living with yourself because you don't break your own values at the end of the day of whatever it is that you're doing. But I'm going to hand it off to Coach Jared here, but I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Craig.
Yeah, one of the other things, Jeremy, that served me well was just I live by extreme example. And so this is what I want. This is what I want my life to be like. And so I used to go out with friends who drank, and it sucked not drinking with um, people who were drinking because they peer pressure you, and eventually became, obnoxiously drunk, and it's annoying to be around a little bit. But by doing that, eventually there were, for every 10 friends that you have that act a certain way, four of them don't, maybe six of them don't want to do that. And they eventually came over to the other side, so to speak. And, now some of my friends are healthier than I am, who used to be bigger drinkers than I am. And so when
Mhm.
you lead by that example, if we got our family up here, both my wife and mine, they love to talk about Mr. Trump, and not in a good way. And my wife and I are like, "Oh, we just don't want to hear it, like we can't control this man, and we can't, and we don't like some of our leaders up here, but we don't complain about them because we know that this stuff is outside of our control. And so what we do is we set intentions before family events, and we've had a lot of them recently with birthdays. We set intention. If the conversation moves in this direction, we are mentally prepared for it, and we are mentally prepared to move the conversation in another direction so that we keep the peace. We keep
Mm,
the peace because there's
mm,
so much benefit for, and there's so much we love about them. And then there's this side that we don't love, seeing in them, and we're not gonna get sucked into it, and we're gonna, detour around this and get everybody back on the straight line of success. And it's kind of, it's almost like Jedi mind trick that you have to do with some folks. And so, what you can do for everybody is, when you're going into a conversation with somebody, whether it's an old buddy who wants to peer pressure you or whatever, or if it's somebody who wants to bring up a conversation, about raising your kids, that you don't want to hear it because you're already set. It's coming, so you do planning and preparation for it. And every time, for everything that you don't want to talk about, you got two other doors to go through. If they're going this way, I'm going to go that way, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to try this thing. And that way we can get the best out of people while avoiding the sides that we try not to, or we don't
mhm.
want to.
It's really good, man. And I can vouch for, I know, Craig and I have known each other for a few years, not extraordinarily well, but well enough where I tell you what, I've seen this in play a couple of times with us scheduling calls and things like that. And when we were in Mexico and guys were gonna, we had a meeting and then guys were gonna go do a certain thing. And I remember you specifically, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember you specifically saying, well, no, I've got this time that I'm going to be doing this. And it was very clear that you had your goals, your things you were going to do, and it wasn't off-putting. It wasn't anything that was, outside kindness. It was
Mhm.
very just clear, like this is what I'm going to do right now. And I remember as we all went to with this other room, I could see you sitting there and you had your laptop open and you had siloed yourself to go do this stuff. It doesn't come across the wrong way at all. It's just very, very intentional. And you can do that without hurting feelings. You really can.
There's real quick story is that one of my coaching clients is a woman of very strong faith, and she reached out to this other woman, this author who writes Christian stuff for business owners or something.
Mm,
And so she reached out by email, and the email reply back she got was so good. It was, Beth thanks you for sending a message and really appreciates it and would love to get back to you, but she's very busy doing God's work. And so my friend forwarded it to me, and I said, "That's the best reply ever, because how as a Christian woman do you argue with that? Like,
right.
well, I'm more important than God. Like, you can't do that." And
Yep.
so there's a tactful way, whatever your
I
situation
love
is
it.
in life, there is a tactful way for you to, um,
Yeah.
respectfully show your boundaries, and that's very important.
Yes. Yep. Yep. And you do it extraordinarily, extraordinarily well. Jared.
So thank you for being here and for giving us your time and wisdom. My question is, as someone who has coached and helped a lot of men, What is a question that we should be asking you, but you rarely do get asked?
Hmm.
And then what would your answer to that question be if you can?
How can Matt be a better host, Jared, is what you just said. Is how does Matt do a better job? No, that's a good question, Jared.
Um, so I would say that it is a very good question. And I'm trying to think of the best thing because there's some things that come up that people do ask about. So, or things that I see and I do talk about quite a bit, like, and kind of like keeping going with our last conversation is we need to figure out how we can set boundaries appropriately because even with aside there's the guilt aspect of our family members asking us to do stuff. You and I are ambitious. Every single person on here is an ambitious wild horse. And I talk about wild horses in the book. We just want to do everything. We want to experience everything. We want to achieve everything. We want it all. And that is good in a way in that it drives us to energy. But my goodness, it's bad in a way because we can't do it all. And so we have to learn how to say no. And so I guess the question that people should ask me is, how do I learn how to say no better?
Hmm.
And I do hear this from my clients a little bit, so I can't say I've never heard it. But it really comes down to parameters and checklists. And again, using the example of the phone as an operating system. An operating system gets inputs in, and then it goes, if then that, right? So if this, then this happens. So if you get a question in, then you run it through the parameters checklist to see if the decision serves you. And if it doesn't serve you, you say no to it. So learning how to say no, because as the man, possibly a business owner, possibly the major breadwinner in the family, and if you're successful now in the eyes of the community, you are the person with the deep pockets. You are the person who should be giving all their time and their money to other people. You're just going to get asked for everything, guilted, by people who you don't say yes to enough. You're going to have to deal with all this stuff. The more you stay in a group like this, the more you're going to have to deal with this in the future. And if you don't have parameters around saying no to things, you're going to get spread too thin, and you're not going to make the impact that you have. And so one of the things to do is to front run it. So look at what Bedros does. What's his charity?
What's his charity?
It's a toy, right?
It was Toys for Tots was mine, which he contributed to, but it's Shriners.
That's
Bedros
right.
is the Shriners guy. So Bedros has talked enough that if you
That's right.
if you paid attention, you would know that Bedros does everything for Shriners. That he's always wanted to be one of the greatest donators to Shriners Hospital. And so, he gives away part of the money that he makes in some of his coaching stuff and at his events to Shriners. And so everybody's going to want a piece of Bedros, but Bedros can say, as you know, all my charity goes to Shriners. So I appreciate you and so on and so forth. But
Hmm.
this is my thing. So he's got that path and it's laid out. So controlling the narrative is another thing that men would be
Hmm.
very well served to understand and start doing. And what that means is, so you take a look at Jay-Z, right? Jay-Z, I used this example at a seminar years ago, and I'm not sure if anybody truly understood it back then. But I said, I'll tell the full story. You guys can evaluate me. So a nice 60-year-old woman comes to your house, knocks on the door and starts talking. You'll probably give her a few minutes. A young black man comes to your door and, he's dressed like a rapper and starts talking. You might not give him as much time as the old lady, but the lady's Hillary Clinton and the man is Jay-Z. Well, Jay-Z has controlled his narrative that almost anybody would give the time. Because even though he was a drug dealer, he controlled his narrative and he told his story in advance. Meanwhile, Hillary tried to keep all of her secrets and she ended up,
Hmm.
not being as well liked because the skeletons in her closet came up forcefully. She hid them. But Jay-Z put all of his into rap songs, and so they were all on the table, and so people were more forgiving of him. And so he controlled the story about him
Mm.
And so what we want to do, I don't think I did a very good job of that, but
No,
hopefully you guys understand it.
yeah, it's
You
good.
want to you want to control everything in terms of the story around you. So even with being busy, I've for years tried to control the story about how busy I am, how I don't rarely check email, and so on and so forth. And as a result, I don't get a lot of email because people have read my books and say, well, this guy doesn't check email, so he's not going to answer my, my email. So I don't get a lot of unnecessarily
Mm.
email. And so, or by saying, you know, I go to bed at a certain time, people would be like, "Hey, man, it's like 7:30. You must be going to bed soon." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to go to bed soon, so we can wrap this up a little quicker, right?" And so I controlled the narrative around that sort of stuff, which then will reduce the number of requests and help
Mm.
you say no because it's known that you do certain things. It's known that you spend all day Sunday with your family, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. So therefore, you going and watching a UFC fight at somebody's house and drinking, 6 or 12 beers, people are not going to peer pressure you into that because they know, oh, he's always 8 o'clock in the morning. He's with his family anyways, so he's not going to say yes to
Mm.
it. So it's that controlling of the narrative is helpful to help you say no. So it wasn't the greatest answer, I'll
No.
admit, but it was a good question that I had never really thought about before.
No, I really appreciate that. It was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Mr. Toland in there says, no, this is straight ninja. Yeah, I did that. It is such an important concept. I remember talking to Seth Godin about speaking, and we were talking about I was transitioning out from doing 70-ish keynotes a year, and I was
Mm,
transitioning out to other businesses and not going to be on the road as much. And he said, look, he said, well, he essentially said the same thing. I'm controlling the narrative now. If somebody wants me to speak and it's a cause or an organization that I'm a fan of, and I can walk to it, I can just walk to it from my house. I'll do it for free. I don't care. And everybody knows that that's the case, but it's got to be something I believe in and it's something that's really quick and it doesn't take a lot of time, right? He said the further you get away from that, either in an organization and it's the mission that I'm not quite aligned with, or I've got to travel and spend more time and more time flying further away, spending more time because it's a 2 day thing, whatever that looks, the price is going to go up exponentially. And he
yeah.
says, I controlled the narrative there. So if somebody came to me and they're like, well, you live in New York, but we're in California, and here's going to be this, but look, the narrative already is that's going to be a pretty dang expensive engagement. And so it limited the amount of people that were just trying. It was like they knew because he had controlled that narrative. It's brilliant.
Beaudreau did an Instagram post about this years ago. He goes, "My speaking price is either free or $50,000."
There it is.
And it's like
You
it's
pick. That's right. It's based on
based
parameters.
on who you are where you're
Dude.
fitting in on that.
So dang good. I know we're coming up on the hour. We got two more hands. I want to see, are you okay
Yeah,
on
I've got time for it because it's early
you're
where I am.
you're awesome, man. Thank you. Guys,
Yeah.
we'll do the
My
last two.
kid, my girls are still sleeping because they went and did a hard play thing this morning.
You
So
got
they're
them all
still,
knocked
still
out.
napping. Yeah.
Yes. All right, G, let's get you in here.
Sorry, you guys got me on audio?
We've
Yep.
got
Okay,
this.
cool. Craig, thank you so much for coming in, man, and giving us some of your time. Yeah, I've been telling my wife a long time to not trust old ladies that come knocking in the middle of the
There you
night.
go.
It's just we got to treat everybody. No, I'm just kidding. But now I want to lean on your coaching experience with entrepreneurs, specifically. I mean, you've coached a lot, like hundreds, of guys and gals as well that have reached a level of success of like being 7 or 8 figure entrepreneurs. And I was wondering, what do you see as like the underlying like character traits or develop skills in the people that make it to that level of success versus those that don't?
So one of the weird things that you won't hear about is that those people that get to that level kill things really fast.
Mm,
So, um,
Mm,
this guy that's friends with Bedros and I, a guy named Jason Capital, young guy,
yeah, I know him. Yeah.
he, he
Or I know of him.
he was so good. Like even if something was making $1 million for him, and that's good money. If he knew that was robbing him of this other thing that could make 10 million, he would kill that million thing. And
Mm,
most people that don't really accelerate to the next level, they hold on. They hold on to the good and they sacrifice the great. And that's back to like the whole part of theme of my book. And so we need to constantly review what are we holding on to that's good that's stopping us from going to the great level, right? Like, we're selling this thing, we've always sold this thing, and it's just hit a ceiling, but we've always done this. And even though there's a better path, those people that do get to, especially to the 8-figure mark, are willing to kill it, to rebrand, to improve, to kill part of the product and destroy themselves to grow bigger with the new opportunity. And we see that. I'm trying to think of an example, but every time, like, even with Hotmail, I remember years ago, I was like, I'm finally used to this version of Hotmail, and then they go and do another version of it, but they're doing that because they are anticipating something that, there's going to be a new way that people are going to use it, or that it's simply better for, maybe it's, maybe it's cost reduction for them, and then everybody else get used to it. But the person who gets stuck just won't have the courage to do that. So that's one of the things that I see. And then also, a message that I've tried to get across here is that those people that do get further ahead are willing to say no more. Again, they're going to sacrifice the good. All these. The more successful you are, the more people want to partner with you, the more people want to do stuff with you, the more people want, like, hey, can you come and do this for our team or whatever, do a free training or whatever. And they got to say no and stay focused, because if you do a million other things, you're not going to go from 1 million to 10 million, because you're just going to get stuck. But if you stay focused on it, then you'll be able to hit that. So saying no and staying focused is really one of the biggest things, and shutting down things that just don't serve you.
Yeah. Copy that. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Really good, man. And the last one just says Zoom user, so I gotta, there you go, boom, get you in here. There we go. All right, brother.
What's up? Can you guys,
Hey.
can y'all hear me? Can you see me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
sir. We've got you.
Awesome. Well, Craig, thanks so much for running a little late for this question. And thanks. I mean, I got ages of notes here. Awesome stuff. Um, Quick question. So, I have about a little longer than a year left in the military before I'm hopping out and getting into the civilian world. And I'm really considering going into the entrepreneurial side of things. So, especially some classmates and some friends that I have, I've been reaching out and getting people's thoughts. And just in the last week, 2 people have recommended basically putting that filter in place, like you were talking about, setting those values, the things you want to accomplish. But I've gotten a big theme throughout your call of, saying no, focusing, having your priorities in line and not going too far outside of them. And one of my friends that had started a couple businesses last week was saying, he's like, hey, you're very new to this. If you could take a year to, and if it worked financially, if you could take a year or two to just try a bunch of different things, figure out what interests you, figure out what business model you like, figure out, what clients you want to serve, that'd be a good place to start. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because that's kind of the opposite of focusing. What are your thoughts?
It is a good question. And so what I recommend to people of your age is slightly different. And I recommend that you go and get a job for a great entrepreneur. So go and get hired in the sales department of a great entrepreneur. If you want to stay local, find the best company in your town, in your city, work for them, preferably in sales, where they will train you and understand what it's like to run a business, understand what it's like to be able to make sales. And now you're getting paid. You are getting paid to what most people in the entrepreneur world will actually pay other people to teach them, right? So you're getting paid a salary or paid a commission-based job to go out there to be trained by a company that has a good training program. You're getting the skills for free. You're getting paid to acquire these skills, and you're getting the insight, like seeing how business operates. That's the way that I would do it at your age. And the people that, so if I look up to Beaudreau and say Beaudreau, well, Beaudreau was a personal trainer who learned most of his stuff from Jim Franco, and he was getting paid by Jim Franco to be his personal trainer, and he was getting this information for free. And I would do that rather than starting a bunch of things, because one of the truths about entrepreneurship is you have to learn how to do sales. You have to be good at selling, whether it's selling through the written word or selling through the spoken word. There's no way around being an entrepreneur without selling. And so going and extending your educational time, but again, you're getting paid to be trained to be good at sales. Most entrepreneurs, what they do is they go out and spend $10,000 to $20,000 in sales training. Well, you're getting it for free. In fact, you're getting paid to do it. So that's the kind of counterintuitive approach I take. And you can, if you read too many entrepreneur people, it sounds like the only way you can make any money in this world is being an entrepreneur, but that's not true. You can make a lot of money by being in the right company in a sales role. You can get richer than most entrepreneurs. I know a lot of entrepreneurs who, man, I mean, they are making McDonald's manager money, even though they work 60 hours a week. So it's not a guaranteed thing. And that's why I highly recommend, again, find a good company, a good entrepreneur, good leadership, good training program, and spend some time there and stack that cash and the skill set. It's not going to hold you back. That's for sure.
Awesome. Really appreciate it. That's a great thought. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I met was with a well-known entrepreneur not too long ago and met one of his employees who's closing in on $1 million annual, right?
Right. With
Getting
way less waking up in the middle of the night thinking about things.
100%, man. 100%. Man, I don't know if it's a confirmation bias thing or what, but every time I get to talk to you, every time I read your stuff, I'm like, yep, nailed it. Got it on it.
Good.
Like we think so much, we think very much alike, but I think you have an ability to articulate, and I know it's because you live so much of this. You articulate all of this so well, and you
Thank you.
put it in actionable steps, man. And I'm just super appreciative of that. I want to make sure everybody knows where to get the book. I want to make sure
Yeah.
they know where to find you. And most important to us too is how do we as an organization support you, Michelle, the kids best?
I really appreciate it. So everyone just grab the book from Amazon. So you can either go to darksideofdiscipline.com. That'll just forward you directly to the Amazon listing. It's audiobook, ebook, paperback, hard copy. I'm really proud of the audiobooks. If you're an audiobook person, like it's it's a it's a very, very challenging task to do an audiobook because you have to say every word right of every sentence. And,
Yeah.
for someone who doesn't like to talk, it's an exhausting day. So
Yeah.
it turned out well. So I appreciate it. Leave some reviews. That'd be awesome. And then if anybody has any follow-up questions, like I really love that last question at the end. I hear that all the time from young folks, and I just, I have my opinion, and hopefully it's right. And I'd love to answer any of your follow-up questions on Instagram. It's real Craig Ballantyne. And then just share the book, tell people about it. And if anybody knows any other good podcasters, I'd love to jump on the show and share it with bigger audiences.
Heck yeah. Well, I got a few ideas on that too. I'm going to take
Thank
these
you.
guys through a debrief here for the remainder of the hour or two, but I'll shoot you a message in a little bit. I have some ideas on that. We're going to be promoting the book as well and putting that out there, and we'll get some reels around this out there, and of course push the podcast too, man, because I want to see everybody get this. I think it matters. It's extraordinarily well done about things that need to be done well.
Good. And last thing I'll say is in the book, there's a link. We talked about that values and vision stuff. In the
Yep.
book, there's a link that gives you access to some additional videos. And one of the videos is a 2-hour training that I did about creating your values and your vision and planning out your year and planning out your 90 days. And, our clients pay a lot of money for that, but I put the recording in there because it's so important to me and it'll really, really help everybody.
I've gone through it with Craig. I'll co-sign on that 100% right there.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, heck yeah, brother. Thank you for all the work you're doing, man. Thank you for what you're doing in the world. Appreciate you very, very much. I'm going to shoot you a message here in a little bit. I've got a few ideas
Awesome.
on some shows too, and I'll make some connections
Thank
if I
you.
can, whatever I can do to help, brother. But we've got your six, man.
Thank you, everyone.
You're awesome, brother. We'll talk soon.
Bye.